Sophie, till late in the third quarter, you guys were struggling offensively in that frame. Second half in general didn't feel the same as the first half on that end. Did something change for you guys? What did you see as kind of leading to stalling on that end?
Yeah, I think we were just kind of slow. And every time that we're slow, especially defensively, it just somehow affects our offense.
The Indiana Fever lost heartbreakingly to a Mystics squad toward the bottom of the standings 88-84 after taking a 13-point lead in the second quarter and displaying early dominance. Indiana fell apart after the break. Aaliyah, Boston, Kelsey, Mitchell, and Sophie Cunningham all had outstanding performances. But the team was unable to overcome a vicious 227 Washington run. Head coach Stephanie White was singled out for criticism after the game for her controversial rotation choices, especially the perplexing benching of Chloe Bby. Every error is amplified when playoff positioning is at risk. Not only effort is the problem but also strategy execution and the team's ability to bounce back from recurrent setbacks during pivotal moments. The future of Indiana seems dubious at this point.
Overhead is Cunningham with a steal. Cunningham feeds Sims, who goes coast to coast and lays it in. So
they had to make sure they had the right shot clock time as well while they're reviewing that.
So Indiana with a 10-point lead here, 6 minutes until halftime as Boston finds some space and knocks it down. Now Sims launches ahead for Mitchell. What a pass by Odyssey Sims!
Fans of the Indiana Fever were shocked to see their team blow a double-digit lead and lose to the struggling Washington Mystics 88-84. Aaliyah, Boston scored 20 points, Mitchell contributed 14 and 9 assists, and Cunningham did a little bit of everything, so it wasn't for want of skill or effort. However, coaching choices were a major concern, although spectators were left wondering why dependable shooters like Chloe Bby never saw the court. Stephanie White's post-game statements pointed to offensive stagnation and fouling. The strain increased after Indiana lost and fell to 7th place in the standings. Indiana needs to establish consistency, particularly in leadership, as the playoffs draw closer. Cunningham's direct post-game remarks confirmed what many people already believed: the Fever need to quickly regain their toughness.
The Buckeyes.
Here is the Buckeye product on the backdoor pass, but Mitchell lost the handle. Sutton thought about the three, steps in, Hull got a piece. Dolson has been wide open all possession, splashes home a three, and we are level at 46.
The Indiana Fever lost another game that could have been won, this time to a Mystics squad that few predicted would prevail. Washington's 227 surge in the first half set the stage for a second-half meltdown. After a strong first half, Boston, Mitchell, and Sims all had excellent games, but Indiana was unable to bounce back and lost 88-84. Sophie Cunningham expressed her unhappiness with the team's lack of aggression after the game. Fans meanwhile questioned coaching decisions, especially the benching of dependable shooter Chloe Bby and Stephanie White's strict rotation. Every mistake is exacerbated because the Fever are now vying for the 7th playoff place. Players are sending a clear message: play with fire or risk getting burned. Is the coaching staff paying attention though?
5 off the bench. Indiana has 8 first-quarter bench points. That's typically been a strength when they're playing well, as Iriafen just bullies her way inside. Now Citron being guarded by Lexi Hull. Hull goes over the screen, defends her really well. Citron just has to fire it up, and a circus shot for Citron.
In addition to injuries, the Indiana Fever are dealing with their own issues. It wasn't about getting outplayed in Sunday's 88-84 loss to the Washington Mystics. It had to do with not closing. The Fever had a halftime lead and a 13-point lead in the second quarter before losing badly in the third. Washington's 227 run turned the tide of the match. Boston, Mitchell, and Cunningham did their best, but Indiana had no answers. The rotation caused some controversy, especially the absence of Chloe Bby, who is a talented shooter. Sophie Cunningham was adamant after the game, calling for the team to return to being dogs. However, the increasing discrepancy between coaching decisions and player urgency makes fans question whether the Fever can maintain their playoff position.
Why at the same time? Because I'm you and you're me. You're supposed to find me. Subs in the chat.
The Indiana Fever appeared to be in control for 3 quarters, then everything fell apart. A 88-84 loss to the Washington Mystics revealed obvious problems with leadership and execution rather than skill. Washington surged behind a 227 run while Indiana's offense stalled in the second Half Sophie Cunningham added intensity. Mitchell had a solid floor game and Aaliyah Boston dominated inside. Fans however were perplexed by the rotation choices, particularly since Chloe BBY was benched. The message was clear: there is no time for passive leadership or passive play. Sophie's post-game remarks: we have to get back to being dogs. Broke through the clamor. Accountability must begin at the highest level if the Fever hope to remain in the playoff race.
Gets it into Boston. Hand off Mitchell. Indiana has to hurry. Lob back for Boston. Boston finishes. It's a 2-point game. 5.9 seconds remaining.
The Indiana Fever lost to a Mystics team they had every opportunity to defeat 88-84, letting a pivotal game slip through their fingers. After taking a commanding lead in the first half, Indiana faltered in the second half, giving up a 227 Washington run that totally changed the tide of the game. Aaliyah Boston scored 20 points while Mitchell and Cunningham also made significant contributions, but the team's offense stalled. Head coach Stephanie White's decisions, especially keeping Chloe BBY, the team's sharpshooter, on the bench, infuriated the fans. The team needs to get back to being dogs, Sophie Cunningham said bluntly after the defeat, highlighting a larger problem: this team lacks the tenacity and strategic direction to win games.
Cunningham looking, finds Mitchell, launches a corner three, it won't go, rebound Aichler, and this young Washington Mystics group who continues to impress throughout this season, and Sidney Johnson in his first year comes up with a big win on the road.
More than just a difficult evening, the Indiana Fever's 88-84 loss to the Washington Mystics served as a warning. The Fever wasted a double-digit lead and struggled to establish any rhythm in the second half, with playoff implications looming. The offense resorted to isolation plays despite Mitchell facilitating and Boston anchoring the paint. Cunningham's frank post-game remarks and defensive vigor said it all. Fans were perplexed by head coach Stephanie White's choice to bench Chloe BBY in a game where spacing was urgently needed. Indiana instead leaned into predictability. This collapse wasn't about effort, it was about failing to respond, and now the Fever's playoff aspirations are starting to seem precarious.
We over-dribbled at times. Our off-ball movement wasn't there. We did a lot of standing. It's almost like we gave the ball to Kelsey and just tried to watch her work. And that's not when we're at our best. I mean, yes, certainly we want to have the ball in our hands, but we've got to continue to get movement with and without the basketball. It was getting stuck. I mean, we want to play 0.5 to 1 second basketball, and we weren't. And it's got to get moving.
A promising game turned into a devastating collapse as the Indiana Fever dropped 88-84 to the last-place Mystics. Despite leading by 13 in the second quarter, the Fever unraveled after halftime, giving up a 227 run and losing control. Aaliyah Boston was terrific with 20 points, while Kelsey Mitchell did everything she could as a facilitator. Sophie Cunningham's tenacity and passion were clear, especially after the game when she called for a return to the team's identity, but all that work was hampered by questionable rotation choices from head coach Stephanie White. With Chloe BBY out and the offense bogged down, supporters are asking harsh questions. Can this club regroup before the postseason slips away?
Maybe tonight, were there thoughts maybe plugging her in to try and spark the offense a little bit, or what was the decision behind not playing her?
Yeah, there were some thoughts. I think that it matched up defensively more than anything with the way that we were going to try to play them, or in some of our switches and things like that. So that was mostly the reason.
And then just with the rotation, was it just those eight or seven that you ran with? Was it just they were flowing well and you wanted to just leave that going, or what was the thought there?
Yeah, I think some of it was defense. Being able to execute the type of defensive coverages that we wanted to have against this, the way that they play.
Indiana Fever's sad loss to the Mystics wasn't about talent, it was about squandered opportunities and questionable choices. The Fever entered the night favored to win and appeared poised early with a 13-point second quarter lead, but things fell apart after halftime despite good efforts from Boston, Mitchell and Sims. Indiana's offense stalled. Sophie Cunningham provided her typical fire, including post-game honesty that reflected the fans' emotions. Chloe BBY, a 42% three-point shooter, didn't play a single minute. Head coach Stephanie White mentioned matchups, but such excuses are ringing hollow if the team's leadership doesn't tighten up. Indiana's hold on a postseason berth is eroding, and they risk losing the momentum they have fought so hard to achieve.
It hurts. I mean, I think we had 8 turnovers for 13 points in the second half as well. So we didn't take care of it.
The Indiana Fever's game on Sunday was a tale of two halves. The initial half dominant, the second one horrible. Deep execution and decision-making errors were shown in an 88-84 loss to the struggling Mystics. Mitchell ran the point with grace and Aaliyah Boston was a force inside. The grunt work was done by Sophie Cunningham, who also contributed assists and created momentum with a crucial steal, however none of that was enough to keep the Fever from killing themselves. Stephanie White, the head coach, came under fire for her rotations, particularly for benching Chloe BBY during a game where spacing was crucial. The Fever are facing the harsh reality that hustle is nothing without direction as the fans' criticism becomes more vocal.
And I think it was something like a 22-7 run, the end of the second, beginning of the third quarter. And those are hard to recover from when anytime really, but when you're missing pieces. And, we've got to make sure that we're sharper at times. We don't have the margin to have lulls within quarters. And then I believe they had something like 21 points from free throw line and turnovers of their 26 in the fourth. And, we control that, defending without fouling. We control that, taking care of the basketball, decision making at times. And some of it's, playing some people out of position, and some of it's just not being, valuing the basketball in the way that we need to value it, being a little sloppy with it.
In addition to being a terrible defeat, the Indiana Fever's collapse versus Washington represented a breakdown in identity, strategy, and trust. Indiana had a lead at the break, but they lost badly in the second half, giving up a 227 Mystics surge that eliminated their advantage. Sophie Cunningham established the tone with her tough defensive and emotional leadership, while Aaliyah Boston and Kelsey Mitchell maintained their attacking position. However, a slow offense and bad rotations hampered those efforts. It was astonishing to see Chloe BBY completely absent, especially considering how hard it was for Indiana to get floor space. Fans are now focusing on the sidelines, wondering whether the Fever's biggest issue isn't even on the court, as Cunningham challenged the squad to be dogs once more.
Their ball screen coverages right now.
Here's Mitchell on the handoff, bounce pass. Boston, one bounce and a left-handed finish. Here's Boston, the offensive rebound, flips inside to Howard and lays it in.
You go step-up screen, flare on the weak side. They had to make sure they had the right shot clock time as well while they're reviewing that.
So Indiana with a 10-point lead here, 6 minutes until halftime as Boston finds some space and knocks it down.
The Indiana Fever are in shock after losing to Washington 88-84, and supporters are calling for an explanation. Boston, Mitchell, and Cunningham all had outstanding outings, and the Fever dominated the first half, but in the third quarter they completely lost their rhythm. The game was changed by a 227 Mystics run, and Indiana never really bounced back. Stephanie White, the head coach, is being criticized for her in-game choices that did not change as momentum dwindled, not for her lack of preparation. The most obvious decision, not using the team's best shooter Chloe BBY in a match that sorely needed external danger. Sophie Cunningham's tearful post-game remarks echo what the locker room already knows: this club needs answers immediately if it is to make an impression in the playoffs.
Indiana with their work cut out for them here. 6-point deficit, just over 5 minutes left to play. Mitchell, feet inside. There's an easy two for Boston. Cunningham leans in, thought she threw the foul. Boston pulls down the rebound and lays it in.
Everything was going well for the Indiana Fever until it wasn't. In a crucial game against the faltering Mystics, Indiana had a double-digit lead before losing 88-84 due to a meltdown in the third quarter. Despite the best efforts of Boston, Mitchell, and Cunningham, the team failed when it counted most as head coach Stephanie White continues to rely on a tight rotation that completely shut down one of the team's greatest shooters, Chloe BBY. Frustration is growing. Sophie Cunningham's post-match candor broke through the clamor. The Fever need to return to their tough, unafraid self. Talking won't solve the problems, though. If Indiana hopes to remain in the running for the playoffs, it must make a quick change in its strategy.
Police are way inside.
What a pass by Melvin, too. Really nice.
Mitchell turns on the Jets and gets to the rim.
No one can keep Kemper as one of the best rebounders out of her area, which means the ball not directly above her head is Cunningham with a steal.
Cunningham feeds Sims, who goes coast to coast and lays it in. So 4 quick ones for Indiana.
Washington's 88-84 victory over the Indiana Fever was a perfect example of how to lose a game badly. The Fever lost concentration, effort, and ultimately the game after dominating the first half. Mitchell distributed with control, and Aaliyah Boston led the squad with 20 points and a solid rebounding game. In post-game comments, Sophie Cunningham criticized the team's lack of urgency after bringing enthusiasm and hustle. Her remarks joined an increasing number of fans who are wondering why shooters like Chloe BBY are being benched and rotations are getting smaller. It was the way it happened, not just the loss. The Fever need to address these internal issues as the playoffs draw near, or else they run the risk of seeing their dreams for the postseason fade away from the bench. The Indiana Fever lost against the Washington Mystics 88-84, wasting a great chance as the playoffs approached. Boston scored 20 goals, Mitchell had 14 and 9 assists, and Cunningham was the emotional leader, but there was something lacking. Indiana's greatest weakness, their inability to finish strong, was revealed by a 227 Washington run. Fans are baffled by head coach Stephanie White's choices, particularly her hesitation to deploy Chloe BBY while their opponent gained confidence. The Fever's offense stagnated. The fire is there, and Sophie Cunningham didn't mince words after the game, stating that they must get back to being dogs. There is talent, however, Indiana's hopes of making the playoffs could be dashed before they start if coaching doesn't improve.
I think the thing that we just have to continue to do that kind of got us on the run we had before the last couple games was we were aggressive at the opponent attack on defense, and that led to easy transition buckets. That led to everyone being aggressive and on their front foot on the offensive end. And, we have new players, and that's okay, but, we just have to adjust, and we need them. We've faced a lot of adversity. But we should be used to that by now. And I think they could just kind of outwork this a little bit, and that just can't be our.
The Indiana Fever couldn't afford to lose to the struggling Washington Mystics 88-84, but that's exactly what happened when their playoff spot was on the line. Indiana appeared to be in control early on and jumped out to a 13-point lead before faltering in the second half. The offensive rhythm vanished despite 20 points from Aaliyah Boston and 14 points and 9 assists from Kelsey. Mitchell. Sophie Cunningham's post-game remarks revealed her unadulterated anguish at not being able to motivate a comeback, but what worried supporters the most was that Chloe BBY, one of the team's greatest shooters, was not there when shooting and space were most needed. More than just a disappointing night, the defeat was an indication of coaching rifts that would jeopardize Indiana's hopes of making the playoffs.
Really control the outside things. You can't control injuries, and so that's why you really do have to control your mental and control what you can control. And I think that we have a really good group. We're still a tight-knit group. We're adding new players in that are amazing. O's been around the league for a long time, and I know you don't think so, but it's a blessing that you were on another team because we need you here. And so I just think it's an adjustment period. The highs and lows, you just have to stay kind of steady, right? Every team faces it. I feel like we faced it more than most this year, but I think this is going to set us up for something good. I don't know if it's this season. I don't know if it's next season, but I think there's always something that you can be grateful for and learn during those hard.
The Indiana Fever lost to Washington because they were outcoached, not because they were outplayed. Boston, Mitchell, and Cunningham all had excellent performances in the first half, but Indiana collapsed after the break. The Mystics' devastating 227 run turned the tide of the game, and Indiana was never able to respond. The fact that Chloe BBY, a 42% shooter, was benched the entire time left fans perplexed. The obvious defensive lapses on the floor were not consistent with head coach Stephanie White's post-game remarks regarding defensive matchups. Sophie Cunningham demanded greater accountability and aggression, but the coaching staff also needed to hear her message. The Fever's season might end at the worst time if there is no tactical clarity.
Inside the locker room, what were you guys talking about there after the game?
Yeah, I just think that we've had some hard injuries this year. We've had some different lineups and roster spots. And, to be frank, I don't think anyone else around the league thinks that we can do it anymore. But I think that our group does. And I think that we just have to get that confidence back. When we're clicking offensively, defensively, we're scary. And not a lot of teams can beat us, even with the roster that we have right now. And so for us, it's just remembering who we are. It's our identity. We got to get back to being dogs, got to get back to being aggressive, being on our front foot, and not allowing teams like this to come in.
There was more to Indiana's 88-84 defeat to Washington than just a difficult fourth quarter. It showed a group struggling with strategy, identity, and leadership trust. Indiana lost control after establishing a sizable lead as their offense stagnated and defensive errors mounted. The team was unable to execute late despite Boston and Mitchell's strong efforts and Cunningham's hard work on both ends. Sophie Cunningham's post-game call to get back to being dogs was a call for urgency, not just fire deeper. Worries were raised by Stephanie White's decision to bench Chloe BBY, a crucial shooter. The Fever defeated themselves rather than greatness, and if that doesn't change, their playoff run may end before it even gets started.
Kind of that wear and tear's taking a toll.
Not really. And I think that she kind of hit it. You have to give yourself a little bit of grace. When you have so many different lineups, Oh and I have never played together. Oh hasn't played with a lot of people, maybe Tosh. But you have to know her style. She has to know our style. And so it's different, but that's part of being a pro. You got to adjust and you got to learn fast. And I think that's a really cool thing too, because when you click, you click. And so that's scary for people coming in here and trying to play us.
Fever's close defeat by the Mystics was a strategic failure rather than just a lost chance. Indiana jumped out to a double-digit lead, but a 227 surge by Washington gave them the advantage. Boston Mitchell Cunningham and Sims, the mainstays, performed well enough to win, however, a lackluster offense in the second half, and perplexing lineup selections painted a different picture. One of the team's top perimeter shooters, Chloe BBY, did not play a minute. Washington, meanwhile, took advantage of defensive errors and exhaustion because it mirrored what fans were already thinking. Sophie Cunningham's post-game candor struck a deep chord. Right now, the coaching staff's ability to stop getting in their own way is more important than the Fever's ability to compete.
In the third quarter, you guys were struggling offensively in that frame. Second half in general didn't feel the same as the first half on that end. Did something change for you guys? What did you see as kind of leading to stalling on that end?
Yeah, I think we were just kind of slow. And every time that we're slow, especially defensively, it just somehow affects our offense.
The game was in the hands of the Indiana Fever, but they let it slip. A once confident team fell apart in their 88-84 loss to the Mystics as a result of preventable mistakes and poor strategy. Mitchell led with her typical fire, and Aaliyah Boston threw herself into it. Cunningham contributed vocally and defensively. However, the system malfunctioned as the players battled. Fans were confused by Chloe BBY's absence. The offense stalled and defensive errors increased as the spacing disappeared and weariness set in. The bigger problem was overlooked by Stephanie White's post-game focus on fouling and sluggish movement changes were never made. The group has the heart before a promising season devolves into a frustrating conclusion. They must now have the leadership to match it. It was executioner. The lack of it caused the Fever to lose to Washington 88-84, not effort. Indiana gradually lost the lead after taking a 13-point lead due to subpar ball movement, defensive lapses, and coaching choices that did not change. The offense became one-dimensional as Mitchell put in endless effort on the perimeter and Aaliyah Boston controlled the paint. Sophie Cunningham tried to rally the group both on the court and post-game with her emotional honesty, but the absence of Chloe BBY loomed large. Her shooting might be opened the floor and changed the outcome. This isn't just about one loss, it's about how long Indiana can survive in the playoff hunt without solving the deeper issues that are now impossible to ignore.